This screencast is going to delve deeper and more in depth about how WordPress is put together by using template files, those are PHP files, and how that interplays with the database. We've talked in previous videos, and I mention it all the time, about how WordPress works differently from those HTML sites that you guys hard-coded back in your web design class, where you made a page called About and it had a corresponding about.html page. Well, that doesn't happen when you make a page in WordPress called About. What happens instead is that there's a entry made into WordPress's database that contains all of the individual parts of that post. And likewise, things like your site name, your site's description, the site URL, and every option, every user, everything that ever happens really is contained within this database. So the files that are in the back end of your site, that you access using CyberDuck or FileZilla or whatever file transfer protocol client that you use, with the exception of, say, the photos that you upload, your site, as we understand it, isn't really located in your files. It's located in your database. All the things about the theme, as we've been trying to talk about in this lesson, the theme is just instructions on how to put together your site, how to display your site. But the heart and soul of any website is its content, its data, and all that stuff is held in the database. So what we're going to do is basically just hop into that database and learn a bit about it. So here's good old example one, which you've probably seen in a bunch of these videos. I'm going to go to the cPanel of my website. That's the domain admin. I probably should have logged into this before I started this screencast, but well, I'm not going to turn back now. That would just be silly. All right, good. That was the right password. So think about what we talked about before in this lesson about how template files, in fact, I'll bring up header.php, about how template files put together your page from starting with the top and then going down all the way to the bottom. So we have things like this is the site title, this is the site description, and so there are corresponding places in the template file where these things are produced. Specifically, they're right here, h1 class equals site title, and then there's this bit of PHP code. Likewise, the same thing happens here with the site description. It creates the HTML element and then it gets the content by using this PHP code. So, bit of a review. PHP stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. PHP was developed by this, I think he was like 19-year-old. It originally stood for Personal Home Page. He developed this coding language so that he could more easily update his site on GeoCities or something like that. But it evolved into a very powerful scripting language. PHP is a server-side scripting language. There are scripting languages like JavaScript, which are client-side. It means that you write these bits of code, and that acts as a script for the browser to do things like execute math equations, create a pop-up alert, receive text, pass it on to another process that will then do something to that text. And a lot of things get done using JavaScript. In fact, it's like one of the three cornerstones of the modern internet. But PHP is different. It's a server-side scripting language, which means that this code can only be interpreted by servers, which are especially formatted computers that have the PHP software installed on them. So if you were to create a PHP file on your computer, like you can't run WordPress just off of your desktop like you did with your HTML websites. If you want to run WordPress natively on your computer without an internet connection or without a server or anything, then that's totally doable. There's this program AMP. If you're using a Mac, there's also WAMP if you're using a Windows PC. Basically what it does is it creates these virtual Apache and MySQL servers. So MAMP stands for Mac Apache MySQL PHP. So it acts basically as a server that lives on your computer, and you can have a whole development environment right on your computer, which is actually really nice. And if you want to learn to do that, then you should check out the setting up MAMP video that I'm sure I will have produced by the time you're listening to this. But if not, then you can just look up online how to do that. Anyway, we were having a lesson, weren't we? So, as we were saying, the HTML for the site title gets created right there, and then a bunch of PHP gets run. Well, what this PHP is doing is it's sending what's called a query. Also, you can think of that as a little request to the MySQL database. A database is, you can think of it like an Excel spreadsheet, how everything is nice in neat rows and columns. Everything has its place. There's no ambiguity about where anything is. It works like an Excel sheet, except there are many Excel sheets that are related to each other in little ways that make sense to the database itself. But it's a very, very deliberate, very structured system of these spreadsheets, and it's called MySQL. MySQL, if you want to call it that. Other people call it MySQL. I prefer MySQL, it sounds cooler. But if you want, we're going to go and look at our databases with PHP MyAdmin. I'll open this in a new tab. So this is a free program that comes packaged on basically every web hosting service that you'll ever get. It's free. It allows us to basically interact with our MySQL servers. There are third-party apps. I use one called SQL Pro. It's just a lot more responsive and it works better for me. So you go over here and you see what will be your username and then an underscore and then the name of the database. You're going to need to find the database for the WordPress install that you're going to be working on. I happen to know mine off the top of my head, but if you might only have one install, although you shouldn't because you were told to install on a special one. But if you want to find out the database name of your particular WordPress install, then all you have to do is go back to Softaculous. If you remember, Softaculous was the little one-click script installer that we used to install WordPress. And so just click on WordPress. And it'll give you a list of all your installations right here, current installations. So you have 3 running at the moment. And you'll click this button. It allows you to edit details. We won't edit anything, just find the information. And I'm going to make this window smaller because it shows your password, your database password. And I forgot that this happens, and so I had to throw out like 3 versions of this video because I kept forgetting that my database password was going to get shown. And even though I'm going to probably delete this installation, it's still bad policy to show anybody your your password. So anyway, I'm going to scroll very slowly. Database name Zergquaus underscore WP548. There it is. And so I'll find WP548 right over here. And so you'll see this list of tables. These are all prepended with FPZ and then an underscore and then the name of the table. In a lot of documentation and a lot of like how-tos or guides for WordPress and database work and stuff, you're going to see often they'll say go to WP options or WP posts. Well, I believe that this is something that they changed in more recent WordPress installations, that it used to be that all the database tables were WP underscore and then their name, but they considered that like a security issue to always have the tables be named the same thing, so now it just assigns you something random. But anyway, so let's check out WFPZ options. And so I happen to know this is where things like my site title and my site description are found. And so blog name, and blog description. This is where, when the server reads this PHP script, then it sees, I believe this is the line right here, it says get blog info. And so it knows to go into the database and find the blog info, the blog name, and get example 1. Same thing happens with blog description. So you get it blog info description. So I can actually double click right here and I can alter the actual value. Right now my site title is example 1. I'm going to change it to example 1. The word, not the numeral. I'll also do the same thing for the blog description. And instead of an exemplary example site, it will be an there we go. So take notes, there's example 1 and example of good exemplarism. So I just changed it right there. Let's see what happens. And there we go. It now says the things that I just told it to say in the database. I changed the content of my site directly from our MySQL database. And we can demonstrate how doing things in the WordPress backend, like straight from the WordPress software, can change things back in the database. So I can change my site title here, the normal way. There we go, example uno and historical site. So this hasn't changed yet because I need to refresh it, but there we go. I just refreshed this, and now as you can see, I changed something in the WordPress backend. It ran some queries, and it ended up changing this right here. And so as you can see, this is the interplay that we are talking about, is that we have this, it sets up there a place to be an HTML element, and then it runs this PHP script that says, hey, go into the database and find the bit of information that we need. It goes into the database and it says, all right, example uno. That's going to be the text that I put right there. The same thing happens with the description. It sets up a place for there to be an HTML element, and then it says the actual content of that element will be found in the database. So it says, hey, go get the blog's description. It gets the blog's description, puts it in there, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and that's how every single page is built. So, yeah, there we go.